For this session, I wrote 79 words. For this session, I wrote 43 words, and my week's total word count is 639 words. I am at another transition segment in my manuscript, and I tend to find those segments the hardest to write. I am much better now at recognizing when I need to make transitions and not being so scared to do them. What I am still ironing out though is the stylistic component of making that transition smooth, or just being okay with it being jagged and letting that be part of the overall aesthetic of the manuscript. I think of my manuscript as a painting rather than a book. So my approach to imperfection is a bit different. Anyways, the session is done. I am in need of coffee. I have been up since 5:30 this morning with only 1 cup of green tea to fuel me so far. So I'm definitely in need of an energy boost. For this session, I wrote 104 words. November has been an absolute whirlwind. I can hardly believe that we are halfway through the month. I had all these grand plans for my reading this month. However, things have changed, and I'm actually really looking forward to these changes. I have restarted Gateway Meditations, and I've decided to slow down my role with reading again so that I can really devote more attention to my spirituality practice. I have been perceiving a call to return to basics, and this return to the basics, the foundation, isn't to repeat cycles, but to experience them anew at a new level from where I am presently. I am still writing every single day. That's not going to change. But now that I do have that part of my process streamlined, I think it's time for me to refine more of the other skills that have been put to the back burner in light of me trying to figure out my writing process. Reading still remains a high priority in my write life. However, I think I'm going to moderate that a bit more so that I can focus my energies on the other areas of my life that I do need to work on. Let's talk about some books. I went to Goodwill, what are we on? It's today Thursday. I think I went on Monday or Tuesday, and I picked up a few books, and I'll share them with you. The first one I found is called The Laws of Evening by Mary Yukari Waters, and it is a novella. Really, I was drawn to this book by its title, its size, and the quote on the front by the San Francisco Chronicle: as meticulous as origami, and that had me. I am always on the lookout for interesting titles and interesting books that aren't really commonly known, so I'm glad I found this. I know nothing about it, going into this completely blind. Next up, I found A Writer's Diary by Virginia Woolf. So I'm very interested to read her autobiography. And then, book number 3, I found a copy of The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I love The Secret Garden, the movie, when I was a kid, and I'm pretty sure I read the book also when I was young, but I don't really remember it. So I'm really glad I found a copy because I definitely want to dive into it for the nostalgia. And then lastly, for my Goodwill trip, I decided to pick up Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. And this is a book I've been thinking about reading on and off for a really long time, and I found this really kind of, sometimes I do like these beat up books, so I found this one. I was like, you know what, it's small, I can carry it around easily with me, and let's just give it a go. So pick this up. So that's what I have for my Goodwill book haul. It's a little one this week, but for this video, I did want to talk about one other thing. I don't think I mentioned this in previous videos, but around 2.5 years ago, I think it's almost 2.5 years ago, I self-published a book called It's Okay to Burn Bridges. 52 Lessons on Courage, Life, and Liberty, published by yours truly, Hallelujah Moritz. It is a little book. It's an easy read. Each chapter is very short and is really just to give new perspective to things that we have taken for granted in modern life. I self-published this through Amazon KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing. So it is there if you are interested in reading it. But the reason why I want to talk about it finally now, really 2.5 years later, is because I wanted to share a little bit about my journey as a writer. This is a work of nonfiction, and it took me a month and a half or so to write, and then I edited for like another week, and then I put it up to publish. I remember very clearly how this book came about because it was right after my husband's 30th birthday. We had gone for a 30-mile backpacking trip for the first time ever. And it was after that trip that I suddenly had this download to write this book and get it out there to the world. Up until that point, it had been such a huge dream of mine to write and publish a book, and this was my first one that I ever did. I am very proud of it, but I was not ready to really talk about it when I first published it. It just kind of happened, like all of these thoughts that I had swimming in my mind just finally kind of came out onto paper, onto my laptop, because I typed it up and then, published it. But all of my thoughts just came out and became this book. At the time, I was a little active on Instagram for my personal account, and there were a lot of self-published authors also in that scene really pushing out and promoting their books. And after I wrote and published this book, I was left in a position where I was like, do I have to now be about this book for the rest of my life now? Is this what I have to, is this the new religion that I have to subscribe to, my own book? What I'm trying to say is that I felt at odds with what I was supposed to do after I had published this book. And I did not want to make it my entire life to talk about this book and live as the advocate for it. So here I was, really proud of the work I had done on the one hand, but also really unsure about how to put it out there and at what level I really wanted to put my book out to the public, in the sense of I did not want to be talking about this book every single day for the next year plus. And so I didn't. I let it be and exist on Amazon, and I stepped away from writing for a bit because I also had a lot of questions that I needed answered about the writing process, about my direction in writing. I didn't want to corner myself into one genre, into one kind of writing style. And so I took a long break, and also during that time I was going through a lot of personal changes as well. So I was working through a lot of things in my life. And when people would ask me about my book and its meaning and its implication for why I wrote what I wrote, I could not field those questions. I was not ready to answer them. I was not in a good place myself to answer anything about writing, because this is the first book that I ever put out there into the world. I was also figuring out my relationship with social media at the time, because I did not want social media to consume my life. And observing other self-published authors just constantly show up onto the platforms and just constantly talk about their books, I was like, I don't want to live like that. I am not a huge social media person. I like it in doses, and I appreciate it in doses, but I can't do social media like every single day. And that was also a major challenge that I had to wrestle with in my self-publishing journey, because it also seemed like with the algorithms favoring people who posted often and regularly, I was like, man, how am I supposed to do this? Like, do I really have to force myself out there like every single day to do this? Long story short, I took a break, I went deep, I focused on my spirituality, I worked through my personal issues, I figured out my writing process, I liberated myself from the confines I had placed myself in and the limitations I put myself in, and today I am here. Along the way, I figured out at what level I can show up on social media, and I figured out which platforms are best for me. So I'm not really active on Instagram, but I am on YouTube, and I show up twice a week, not for anybody else, but just for my own documentation of my write life and the things that I'm learning along the way. Anyways, today is a bit of a rambly video. It is what it is. But before I end this vlog, because I want to still keep it a little bit short and sweet, I'll read you a little bit about my book. It's okay to burn bridges. You don't have to be nice to everyone. Well-roundedness is a typecast. Fear will not improve the odds in your favor. You are not behind, you're early. Rest accelerates. Consistency comes in different forms. These are some of the lessons that aren't taught in modern conventional life, but are powerful to completely transform your life for the bold and free. Conformist culture keeps you bound in fear and removed from the capabilities you have to live beyond the status quo of the ordinary. This book is to remind you of your potential for more and liberate the courage within you to go for it. So if you are an affirmations person, I think this might be of interest to you. Let's see here. I just randomly flipped to lesson number 32, know when to pivot course. And I'll read you a little excerpt. People love perseverance stories, so much so that it has become the proverbial plotline to great success. If you have a vision for something extraordinary, you relentlessly pursue it until you've achieved it. Usually with the uniform strategy you started out with. At no point is quitting ever an option. For those people who know exactly what they want in life and why they want it for a greater cause, this method works out well for them. But for everyone else, this method is blind ambition with little to no reward that causes a lot of damage to self and others. For most of us, we spend a good portion of our adulthood unlearning old conditioning and rebuilding ourselves with new perspective, trial, and error. Much of the knowledge we start out with becomes obsolete as we integrate new learning, behaviors, and actions toward our evolution. In such dynamic states as this, knowing when to change course early on rather than continuing in pattern is a critical skill to progression. Staying too long in a mindset, routine, or pathway creates a fixation that reinforces habituation and fear-based living. People tend to think that changing course equates to giving up, but quitting and pivoting are not synonymous. Quitting occurs when you relinquish the big picture vision in defeatism, whereas pivoting maintains the overall vision with refinement of the vision through new insight and or the strategies toward achieving it. Pivoting, therefore, continues the pursuit of your vision with flexibility for modifications and expansion. Though inspiring in story, rigid methods are only one of many ways that people persevere, overcome, and advance forward. If a method is not working for you, it's just as valiant to have the courage to let it go and try something new. Clinging to former ways to maintain a long record of effort is futile to your outcome if your method is moot. Anyways, that is it for this vlog, and I will see you in the next one.